and that's the American goldfinch, Spinus tristis, bringing us in. Welcome to the Dissectify podcast, the show that gets you curious about the wild world right outside your window. I'm your host, Nicholas Sines, bringing you content far too late every Tuesday night, and I missed last Tuesday because of the holidays. So I'm going to try to make this one a little extra long, like a megasode, but we'll see, because I still need to, edit it and all that. So we'll see. But today's episode, I wanted to cover the largest, most diverse group of tiny animals, the invertebrates, the insects. It's a bit of an interesting story behind this. I wanted to focus on this because back in 2020, I decided I was tired of being inside, right? There's a virus sweeping the globe. And finding great success in finding new human hosts, and among our species, the Homo sapiens, this resulted in a long-running lockdown, right? So I decided I'm tired of being inside. I'm gonna do what I wanted to do, and I like seeing nature. I like exploring nature and finding new things. And so I decided, why not lean into it? Why not invest in a new camera? Because I always had my old Zoom point-and-shoot camera, which is great. I really recommend it. You don't need anything fancy or new. If you want to do animal, if your main goal is just to find cool things, you don't need a big expensive camera. You can go onto eBay and find some mega zoom point-and-shoot camera, and it'll do great. But yeah, I highly recommend that. You don't need to go out and spend thousands of dollars for expensive camera equipment. If you want super top-notch pictures, then yeah, probably that's the route you're going to need to go. But some of my best pictures were done with a point-and-shoot camera. Anyways, back to the story, right? 2020, COVID's happening. I'm tired of being inside. I buy this expensive camera and decide to lean into this. I'm like, if I want to be outside finding nature, I'm going to do it. So I do. And I've been doing it for years, but that was the point in time I really decided to just kind of go for it. This is something I like to do, something I want to do, so I'm just gonna put my time and my money and just kind of do it. So yeah, this led to the overly ambitious goal that I think I still advertise on Instagram a little bit, but I decided, what would I want to do with my life? And I was thinking I would be happy if I just spent most of my life. I don't think I'd be happy doing all of anything, my whole life for one thing. I don't think, you need a little bit of diversity. But I thought I would be happy if I spent most of my life just looking for living things, right? I'm going out, I'm learning about them, I'm exploring, and I'm finding things that I never knew even existed. And that's still true. And it's been great. I think a really great way to do it is just, if this is something you're interested in, you don't have to go across the country or across the globe or anything crazy like that. You can just download, you can do it any way you want. Basically, all you need to do is go out, look at things, remember them. It helps if you take pictures or notes, or if you have books, or try to educate yourself somehow, and then go out and find these things, or notice something you haven't seen before, and then try to go and learn about it. But the way I do it, and I think a really good way to do it, is to download iNaturalist. It's this app on your phone, and they use a combination of human... man, the digressions are crazy. I'll get back to the COVID camera stories, I promise. But yeah, a great way to do it if you want. Consider this is the nature tip for this episode. I would say if you wanted to go out and explore nature, you could take any camera, even your phone, and if you have your phone, download iNaturalist, and then you can kind of leverage this massive community that's already probably taken pictures of what you've seen. And if you're lucky, maybe you found something new. It's not impossible. It's more unlikely, maybe, because there's so many people looking for so many things, but It's not impossible to find something new. That happens all the time, just a little less commonly. But yeah, take the app, take a picture, upload the picture to the app, and then they'll use this like image classification model and say like, oh, based on your coordinates, where the picture was taken, and what we see in the picture, this is what we think it is. This is what species we think is in this picture. And then you can make that suggestion, and a lot of knowledgeable people around the world will see that you made this post, and it may not be immediate. Sometimes it takes quite a while, but really knowledgeable people, even experts, can come along and say, look at your picture, oh, I think it might be this. And we'll kind of circle back around to this later in the episode, but I think that's a really good way to do it. That being said, you don't need a smartphone, you don't need a camera, although I think it makes things easier. But yeah, you can just go out and look. Remember, try to read, look it up online, or yeah, I think that's a good way to do it. But yeah, I came up with this ambitious goal, right? I was like, I like this so much, and I've liked this for so long, finding things in nature, learning about them. I did it for college, I do it in my spare time now, but at some point I was thinking, man, I just would be, I think, content, happy doing this. And so yeah, I lean into this, and I come up with the ambitious goal that I think I still advertise on Instagram, where I was like, I want to find every species on the planet. I want to see it. I don't necessarily need to take a picture, although I do have a general rule for myself that if I go into a zoo and I see an animal, or if I see something like that it doesn't really count, right? I want to see it in the wild, in its natural habitat, and this doesn't necessarily mean animals. It can mean plants, insects, fish, fungi, animals, whatever, right? Any living thing, I kind of want to see it where it evolved to be, because it has interactions that are going on around it, and just seems more authentic to me. And so I had this ambitious goal where I was like, I want to personally see every species on the planet. And then, like, I think it's been, 5 or 6 years? 6 years now? 2026. Duh. Happy New Year's. Happy New Year's, everybody, by the way. I found a lot of cool stuff, done a lot of trips. I'm going to still doing it. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm getting better at it all the time, trying to share my knowledge, and if this grows, probably learning from, well, not probably, I will be learning from you guys too. There's just too much out there for any one person to be knowledgeable about. So I'd really like to build that knowledge base kind of collected in one spot where people can talk to each other and learn about all this stuff together. Digressions are crazy, bro. So yeah, had this overly ambitious goal. It's been 6 years, and my let's see, roughly how many species on the planet living? So, the guess is going to be probably, the margin of error here is probably going to be crazy, but it says about 8.7, and there's another one here saying 5 million plus or minus 3. So somewhere between 2 to 8 million species living, which is a crazy margin. But even if you took the lower end of that scale, right, like 2 million, yeah, I think I found 1,000, which has been great. I've loved it, love every second of it, and I'm going to keep doing it probably for my whole life, and hopefully convince a lot of you guys that it's worth doing, and doing respectfully, right? Don't be harassing wildlife to try to get a good picture or something. But yeah, if it were 2 million species, even if it was 8, kind of doesn't really matter. As far as my metrics go, yeah, 1,000 in 4 years, 5 years, 6 years is just, it ain't happening, bro. I ain't making it, which is okay. But I'm still gonna keep doing it. But I guess this sort of gets into what the whole goal of Dissectify is, it's sort of been brewing for a long time, but I was convinced that how are people really gonna know, right? I think a lot of people care about wildlife, but there's just not enough knowledge there. It doesn't seem applicable to their life. And so this is sort of what it came out of, is I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to do this goal, so maybe I'll ask others for help, and then it's just sort of evolved from there. And yeah, I was convinced that how are people going to value nature when they don't even know what's out there, right? How are you going to value conservation if you don't know what there is to lose? And you're only going to know what there is to lose if you go out there and actually look, actually learn about the nature that exists. Got some really good car noises, but they're staying in. Yeah, so that was sort of the whole idea of Dissectify, and it's sort of been evolving from there. Yeah, I realized I ain't making it to this goal without some help, and just really kind of discovered like how little I know and how like impossible it is just for one person. Anyways, long circle back. It's 2020. I get this expensive camera. I go out and do stuff. I'm still using the cheap camera too. But you know, mix and match for the scenario. If you're going far, you use a lighter camera. If I'm like going down a slower trail or it's closer to a road, or depending how far I want to take this heavy camera, you know, I'll take the lighter one or I'll take the heavier one. Sort of depends. But it's 2020. I make this decision. Things start rolling. And I think, well, I should start reaching out to places that have like collections, have like more knowledge, right? You can go to a library, you read books about nature, which is great. But kind of like a half step, you can go to a place that actually has like physical specimens of nature, right? You can go to a natural history museum and find actual physical specimens of what things look like. And I think that's massive, right? I think that's like a step beyond seeing pictures of a living thing. To see a picture of an animal and then like a dead specimen of it, so like insects or something, is different. You see the actual size of it, the color and textures and all the other stuff, and probably however they've decided to display it, you'll see some other features that you probably wouldn't see, like the wings maybe moving too fast. Even if you saw it in real life, you're not gonna notice that structure. So yeah, I reach out to this local governmental agency, an agriculture-based agency who has an insect collection, and I said, well, I can even read the email. I said, "Hello, Department Collection staff. I'm a former biology student requesting a tour of the collection. 2 weeks from this date, it will be the 20th, and by that date, I would have finished my second COVID vaccination. I'm especially interested in any known hybrid specimens, keeping in mind this is about insects, so I'm saying hybrid specimens of it, that exist in your collection. I said, I'm far too excited about natural history, and I would love to see the collection if possible. Thank you for your time." And isn't that the stupidest shit you've ever heard? I'm far too excited about natural history. I don't think I'm excited enough. Okay? Anyways, barring this like kind of formal email, yeah, that was like I like read that back and I'm like, what kind of stupid shit is that? No, I'm excited about nature. I think you should be too, and definitely I'm not too excited. That's ridiculous. Anyways, I got the reply back in the same, like pretty quickly, back in 2020, and they said, "Oh, sorry, due to COVID, we're not accepting like visitors." And so I was like, okay, well that sucks. But come like, 3 months ago, so almost coming up on 6 years now, I see that same email in my inbox, in my email. And I was like, I should follow up. I should ask. Because you don't know unless you ask. Which, if you ever want like an inspiring speech from a real weirdo who's doing his own thing, Nardwar, he's doing his own thing, Look him up on YouTube. He's like this really awesome guy who goes out. He's a weirdo. I mean, you know, he's himself, but he goes out and he basically just started his interviewing by like asking, getting close to celebrities and like saying, "Hey, can I interview you?" And so he was like one of the first people, or maybe not one of the first people, but he got like a one-on-one interview with Kurt Cobain just because he asked. And he does it his own weird way, but he's like, does his research. Anyways, check it out. But point being, you don't know until you ask. I find this email almost 6 years later. I send it off and say, hey, it's been a while now. Are you open to a visitor? And I get the response back that the initial person I'd been emailing no longer works there, but that they would accept me as a visitor, but I would have to have a guide, which is fine. I mean, better than fine. Yeah, better than fine, because I may know my insects and stuff better than maybe most, but definitely not anywhere close to an entomologist, right? Somebody who actually studies this stuff. And in fact, I guess there were a couple more parts of the email. They said, yes, I could come over, just provide a time and date, and then it'll be like a guided tour or, you know, supervised tour, and they could show me the insect collection. But they did say like, well, hybrids don't happen. Remember I asked, oh, could I see hybrid insects? And apparently hybrids don't happen that often. They said there was one, I think in mosquitoes, but really doesn't happen that often. I would say maybe we just don't have a complete enough idea of insect species down to the species level. Anyway, I don't know. Maybe I'll go back and I'll ask. But yeah, it was really, really nice, really cool. And I'll start putting some of these pictures that I got to see in this video. And they said, yeah, we don't really have hybrids occur in insects too much, but we do have a gynandromorph, if that's what you mean. And I'll put a picture up now. And what you should be looking at is a really weird insect. It kind of looks like it's split down the middle. And it's a formica ant, so an ant that I believe sprays some acid as a self-defense, but not enough to harm us. But you can see one side is red and one side is black. And this is like a single individual insect. And this can occur when there's a chromosomal error. So like when their very first like cell is splitting to start making an animal, right? There can be sex chromosome differences where the portions that actually make for male or female, so like in humans it would be X or Y. I actually don't know if this happens in humans, but I know it happens in bugs, and I know it happens apparently in birds. But, you know, that male or female sex chromosome, or the absence of whatever, it gets not evenly distributed, so then the cell that ends up starting the left side of the body and the cell that starts the right side of the body, and those separate off, you end up getting one set of cells being like female and the other set of cells being male in the same individual. So that's what you're seeing here, is like the body plan is just almost cleanly divided down the middle, one half being male, one half being female, which is wild, right? Crazy. And you have some really cool, it's more dramatic in butterflies, right? Because you have the big wings, and then you see the same thing in butterflies, split down the middle. And I think sometimes it's not evenly split like that, but in this case, it was. So it was really cool to see that. But I wanted to talk about some of the cool conversations I had with this person, because it kind of opened my eyes a little bit. I guess that's what happens when you actually talk to knowledgeable people who have like a working knowledge on things. So yeah, I'm talking to this entomologist, and you know, I said I want to see some of the cool stuff, like in general the most dramatic stuff, and funny enough they had the ooh-ah drawer. So, like the drawer they pull out for when they have like preschoolers visit or something like that, like little kids can really appreciate the really brightly colored ones or the really shiny beetles or the rhinoceros beetles that have like, the horns going on. And they had this really massive weevil. And if you don't know what a weevil is, it's like, it is a beetle, so it's got, the carapace and everything. It looks like a beetle on the back 2/3, I guess, right? Kind of domed, and then the hard shell covering the wing flaps, and then, what's different about weevils is up front, I think they focus on piercing fruit and then like drinking up the juice. I can put one of my own personal pictures, and then if I can zoom in on the bigger one, you should see that in here too. But basically, they kind of look like an elephant, but instead of a floppy trunk, it's like from the face, it becomes like a curved, sort of like the trunk if it were stuck in one like semicircle position, sort of a thing, like one arch, but it's like stuck there as a rigid thing. Yeah, this weevil's like massive, like I think coming up on 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches, and just really cool. So yeah, I'll just kind of like zoom in on these bugs if they end up coming up in conversation. But I had or while I'm talking, but yeah, I got to ask them all these really cool questions because they actually do have some YouTube videos up, and I never thought about it. But well, okay, I should probably state I asked him to show me the really dramatic stuff and the really bad pests and invasive insects, and also anything he was personally excited about. So yeah, I got to see, the really dramatic, like, tropical insects from around the world. One of them, funny enough, I actually put on the website, so check out dissectify.com. I'm going to plug myself. It's like this really weird, I think it's from South Africa, but it's like, it's a beetle that, I'd say maybe it's 1 inch long, if I remember correct. It's got like this shiny carapace, but weirdly all over it, it kind of looks like it has polka dots, but it has little tufts of hair coming from each of those polka dots, like all over the shell. Which may sound kind of like gross or something, but it looks really cool, and it's totally different than any other insect I've seen. But yeah, I was talking to him, and I had come across the idea from their videos that one of the main ways that invasive insects or pests get introduced to an area they shouldn't be in is actually from plant trade. And so we got to talking about this, and I was like, man, like, how would you solve that? Like, you or me, we could order a plant, and then it arrives, or even worse, a plant nursery orders a plant from, I don't know where, maybe somewhere in the US, maybe somewhere outside the US, and in any of the plant tissues, there could be an insect, right? There could be insects in the soil that it's potted in, or insects in the bark of the tree, or anywhere, really. And I was like, man, like, how do you solve that? Like, well, if you can't ship, like, shipping soil is maybe not so good. Maybe you just ship the seeds. So I'm talking to him about this, and I'm like, is that the main way? Is like through the soil? He's like, yeah, that's a big one, but also in wood. And like, duh, right? You may ship like walnut wood is desired, so it gets chopped down in some other country and then like shipped into the US, and then maybe there was some sort of insect bored into the wood or in between the planks of wood or something like that, but it comes along with that wood or bored into the wood or something. And then, right, that insect may exit the soil or the wood or whatever else, and then end up becoming like a major problem in an area that doesn't have creatures that have evolved to like take it out, right? It's just kind of has free reign to do what it does, right? If it's an ant that bores into wood, or if it's a beetle that bores into trees, that's a big issue in the Pacific Northwest, where this beetle has really kind of like messed up a whole lot of forests because it bores into these trees that aren't equipped to deal with them, and then the trees just die, and you see like these mass die-offs like spreading through the forest because these beetles are just doing what they do. Yeah, so I was like asking him, like, well, like, is seeds a safer alternative? And he's like, well, there's insects in the seed, they can get into seeds as well, and that makes sense. It's an organic tissue, and there could be food in there for them, so insects can bore into the seeds too, so it's just kind of rough. So yeah, I kind of got my gears turning as to like how you would potentially solve this problem. But yeah, I felt like that was a good conversation, and who knows, maybe I'll be able to like get some of these conversations actually on the podcast. We're moving towards that, but we're building up, getting things settled, organizing, preparing. Yeah. And actually, one of the like drawers he pulled out, there were many, and they should be flashing by. We're zooming in on them or whatever. And but one of the drawers he pulls out, and this is like the pest one, I think they were called the wood borer beetles. And they were all so small. I don't know if you've ever seen a fruit fly, but about that size. Where like from afar, there's like all these little pieces of paper and pins and these tiny little insects in this big drawer that I think I actually do have a picture of. But initially I just thought it was like fruit flies. And he tells me these are wood borer beetles, and they're a major issue because they actually like, right, get under the bark and they start like eating their way around, and they're so tiny that like I can understand that if something like that gets introduced, how do you deal with it? They're so small, they could just be everywhere. And on top of that, right, they all looked so similar. I mean, I'm sure if you zoom in on things, you could actually see differences. But like to my eye, or to like a normal camera, and the pictures that are going to end up on apps like a Naturalist, it's just using like your camera phone or something like that. Not many people are going to be taking like the level of magnification that you'll need to like see the details and then like train the image model to actually be able to discern on these things, right? The pictures probably aren't zoomed in enough. They don't have enough quality to really notice the details. And who knows, maybe the details are just too small to usually make it on the pictures. So then like I said, iNaturalist uses an image classification model to suggest these identifications, but how do you do that if you don't have sufficient detail in the picture to actually make the identification? So this was also something I never thought about, was there may be, like, it's just limited. If like you get to an organism that's like just too small, that it's just, you're not really going to get enough good pictures, then the model's probably not going to know, right? It's not going to be able to actually make that accurate suggestion. And even worse, if things are really hard to tell, you may be getting like misidentifications. If things are too small and the model's like doing its best, it's going to give you a suggestion, but actually it's looks just close enough so that it provides a convincing suggestion, but actually it may be wrong, which is worse, I would argue. So I guess from these conversations, I'm thinking, well, my confidence in these... Well, I guess from these conversations, I'm thinking, well, my confidence in these models are a little bit shaken. I would say it's still really useful. It's still like one of the biggest innovations for helping people like actually learn about nature, get in and explore, and I think that's huge. I think you should do it if you want to. It's a great lifestyle. I enjoy it. But yeah, shaking my confidence, I guess, in these models. Yeah, I got to see really a lot of cool stuff, and apparently the area where I live is a hotspot for bees in general, and mason bees specifically. He showed me these really cool, like his own personal project. I think it was like, was mason bees, and some of them were like these really crazy colors. Like this deep navy blue, and there's a lot of, again, it's kind of overwhelming, like the number of species, because like clearly these collections have just been worked on by so many people for so long. That you just have like in one room just like multiple cabinets, which, you know, it's not even a massive room, but like laid out on this big table is just this huge diversity, like massive amounts of biological diversity just from all these little drawers. But yeah, it was good. It was some really thought-provoking conversation that, again, maybe I can circle back to, because it's really good to talk to people who actually, you know, I may think about it, but a lot of people who actually have like a working knowledge of these things, and real expertise. But in keeping with the same theme, I wanted to have the biota beat for this episode be the cicadas, which I think they're kind of ugly. I'm not gonna lie. But they're really impressive with their natural history, so I wanted to cover some of that. And I even found out some kind of freaky stuff. So, cicadas make this really loud buzzing noise, and they stay dormant underground, and they like suck the nutrients out of like plant roots, and so they kind of develop underground, and then they stay dormant for like 13 to 17 years. They do this, right? So they like come out of the dormancy stage after 13 to 17 years, which is prime numbers, which is important because if you're predators and it's going to be this massive influx of food, right? All the cicadas are going to be basically just defenseless, just like free meals to all the other wildlife. But they have this 13 to 17 year cycle where for that period of time they're dormant from getting, you know, laying eggs, developing, and then 13 to 17 years later they will pop out of the ground, emerge, and then do the whole mating thing and repeat the cycle again. They do this because it's long enough that a bird isn't going to be able to like sync up its mating cycle so that its eggs are going to hatch right when the cicadas come out of the ground. Right, so that is there to stop predators from syncing up their mating cycle with cicadas. So, right, if cicadas came out every 12 years, then predators would be able to have their life cycle 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 6 years, and then eventually, right, like if their life cycle was 6 years, then eventually every other life cycle of, or like every other generation, is going to hit on a cicada year, and then they will have like maybe kill all the cicadas. If a predator had, for example, a 5-year life cycle, in order to sync up with a 17-year cicada, 17-year cicadas, it would take 85 years to be able to actually end up hitting on that cicada emergence cycle. And this whole approach is like you just come out in such massive numbers that you can't possibly hit like a large proportion of these insects for predation because there's just too many of you. How are you going to handle them all? You're going to fill up all the predators, and then there's still going to be 80% whatever left over, and then you're safe to continue your life cycle. But I did find some pretty heinous stuff. So apparently there is a fungus called Massospora cicadina that lies dormant in the ground for 13 to 17 years, just waiting for the cicadas to show up. I thought that was my fan going off. That's a rain. Crazy. As you can tell, I live in Arizona. I don't live in Arizona. It provides an ambiance, you know? It's good. Anyways, we're talking about a fungus. that it lies in wait, and it even does more than that, actually. It targets these cicadas, right? That's how it got its name, Massospora cicadina. Lies in dormant waiting for these cicadas, and then eventually it gets to the butt portion, so like the mating area of the insect, and spores get there, and then they start doing what fungus does, and so it kind of eats this portion of the insect, which is pretty rough. But then apparently also will have their behavior altered. So female cicadas do these like wing flicks in order to attract males for mating. So when this big emergence happens, the infected males change their habit in order to look like their female doing the wing flicking, and then other males come over to try to mate with them, and then they get infected by the fungus. And so yeah, it was like, this is pretty gnarly, pretty crazy. But then that cycle happens, the behaviors change, the spores spread, more individuals are infected, and then when they go underground to do their dormancy thing, the cycle starts over again. The spores were there, the fungus did their job, and the infected individuals go on and change continue the fungus's cycle of reproducing. And I think there was actually a really big occurrence of these cicadas where there's multiple groups around the US. I'm not sure about other countries, but these big broods that will come out of the ground en masse. And I think the next one is like the Ohio area in like 2027 is one of the next big ones. So going there would be cool. And I actually wasn't able to find a cicada noise. That's what I was going to do instead of the American goldfinch, but what can you do? I couldn't find it in the usual spot, so. But apparently they do this, or it's thought that they are able to do this, like keep track. They're not, something in them is keeping track. They're not actually physically counting. But they're thinking that the way they're able to do this is by tracking the fluid cycles of the trees that they're like getting the nutrients from. So like each fluid cycle goes by, there should be like certain number of fluid cycles, and then once that number is reached and there's a certain soil temperature that's felt in their environment, right, it's warm enough, then they emerge. They've hit enough fluid cycles from the trees, and then it's warm enough, so they come out. But yeah, this was kind of a cool thing for me. I got to talk to somebody who's really knowledgeable, really cool, and it only happened because I had this really long-running thing that I actually decided to follow up on 6 years later. But we'll see. Going forward, I think there's going to be a lot of other stuff like that. And I'm kind of getting my bearings, but I'd really like to have some of these really knowledgeable people on the podcast to talk to them. So we'll see how that goes. Seems like I succeeded, though. I was trying to give you guys an extra long episode today because I did miss one. Hope you enjoyed the pictures of the bugs. Hope some of that diversity inspired you to go out. I hope to go out and explore. Please leave a review wherever you're listening. Visit dissectify.com. I've made some changes to try to provide you guys some more tools. That's always in the works. But go to dissectify.com for more nature exploring tools. My Instagram @nicholas.signs can be found there. Tag me in your nature photos. I would honestly love to see them. Remember, you live in a world with so many other species, so get out there and check it out. Thanks.